Next, world leaders are gathering in Abidjan at the COP15 to discuss the impact of desertification and drought throughout the world. The issue has wreaked havoc on the African continent. Unsustainable agriculture has depleted soils and it's accelerated global warming and is leading to a loss in a species. 40% of land globally has been degraded. Now, for more on this, we can bring in our environmental affairs editor, Valerie Dekimpe. Valerie, what's driving desertification, and does it have a ripple effect?
Well, in terms of what's driving desertification, there are a number of factors at play. Droughts, you mentioned them, aggravated by climate change. Also, desert sands are advancing at a rate of 5 kilometers every single year, with devastating effects on crops and also deforestation, of course. In Africa alone, the continent is losing 4 million hectares of forests every single year. And we know that part of that deforestation is to make space for more crops, and so you have this vicious circle of fertile land is not as productive because of climate factors, and so there's more deforestation to make more space for crops, and that in turn exacerbates this problem of land degradation. We know, according to UN data, that more than 6 million hectares of land will need to go into production between now and 2030 in order to feed the world's population. So you have this major question of how do you increase agricultural production without further harming the soil and the land? So that is going to be a key question at the heart of this summit in Abidjan. And African leaders, they are pinning their hopes on technology, drought-resistant species. We have seen scientists working on that for a number of years now, so there needs to be a transfer of technology from rich countries towards poor countries. And there's also, of course, a question of funding. How do you provide enough funding to support all of those initiatives? And I think it's become quite clear now that it's not just an environmental issue, but it's also a development issue, as restoring the land also means fighting against poverty, fighting against malnutrition and forced migration.
Because no one wants to migrate. If everyone wants to stay put where they are, and they're forced to migrate because they can't find jobs, can't plant,
Exactly.
etc. What about things that are being done? Because people have these tree planting campaigns. Is that all for show, or?
Well, I think we tend to perceive, tree planting schemes perhaps as the solution, whether it's to capture carbon out of the atmosphere, whether it's to push back against desertification. And it sounds like an easy, cost-effective solution. Everyone likes a tree planting scheme, but I think that we need to be wary of the fact that they're not necessarily, silver bullet solutions. According, again, to UN data, out of 1 billion hectares of land that countries promise to restore, the majority of that remains just a promise and not a reality. Even UN officials have been saying recently, there is greenwashing here that we need to uncover. In the worst case scenario, you have tree planting schemes that only exist on paper, or sometimes we just plant trees, nobody takes care of them, they die, they even get harvested sometimes. In other cases, you have tree planting schemes that go ahead, but they don't lead to any significant results. We've been speaking perhaps a lot about the Green Wall in Africa, stretching across 7,000 kilometers in the Sahel. Initially, the target was 100 million hectares of land. So far, just 20 million have been restored and trees planted there. And I think that now everyone agrees that tree planting schemes can only succeed if you have the support and the know-how of the local communities. And again, the Great Green Wall of Africa is an example of that, in which we initially started out with, let's bring in plants, trees, plant them at the edge of a desert and see what happens. Now we shifted more towards, centered around indigenous land techniques, water harvesting techniques, and protecting trees that emerge naturally in the farmland with endemic species. So I think it goes on to show that it's not just let's plant more trees, but how, what trees are you planting and what's the bigger picture of what you're doing.
Valerie, thank you very much for that, Valerie Dekimpe.
Thanks.